Hi, my name is Perry Elam. I'm fifth generation Black African American in the city of Phoenix. I'm here today to introduce a segment of Black folk in Phoenix. This is going to be a segment designed to give you some history, some insight, and the growth and development of the Black diaspora of the city of Phoenix. I am a person who has been a native of Phoenix, born and raised, grew up in South Phoenix, which is a distinctive part of the city of Phoenix. The purpose of this narrative will be about the growth, development, and the experiences that Blacks have had in developing a culture, a history, and a lifestyle within the city of Phoenix. I'm currently working and volunteering my time at an organization called Black Wall Street, Arizona, Incorporated, which is a nonprofit 501c3 agency designed to help stimulate the economy, to create businesses, and to anchor those communities that most people call low to moderate income, but under our vision and our mission, we called it communities that have been historically underserved and underutilized. Our entire concept of understanding the growth and dynamics of our culture, of Blacks' experiences within the city of Phoenix, will take us from the very beginning all the way up to the present. So get ready, sit back, relax, and enjoy our concept of the growth and development of Blacks in the city of Phoenix. Hi, Perry Elam with Black Wall Street, Arizona. I was asked to sit here and talk about my concept and my experiences as a Black man in the city of Phoenix. Let me start way back when. I was born in a home in South Phoenix at 24th Street and Corona, which is one block south of Broadway. I grew up at a time when mom and dad was the focal point of the family. I grew up at a time where daddy was the household king, and mom, she was the queen. I grew up in a time that in South Phoenix, it was just that, South, part of the South with the South mentality, the South understanding, and the South creativity. South Phoenix was an area that was not a part of the city of Phoenix, that was a part at that time when I was growing up, the county. We had no paved streets. We had very little after 5 activities like skating rinks, bowling alleys, things of that nature, where we created those type of entities out of our own imaginations. As young people in South Phoenix during the time I was coming up, where our competition was against other streets. One street would form a football team and we'd compete against other streets. We played in vacant lots, vacant fields. There were times we didn't have the water bottles and those kind of things where we drank out of garden hose, okay? And one of the things that I was very, very curious about was how did South Phoenix become South Phoenix with a community of Black folk? So I started digging about history. I started looking back into the past. One of the things I found was there's very little history kept of the growth and direction of Black folk in South Phoenix. There were a few history books. There were a few books written. There were a few people even taking notice of the elders within the community, how they became, what they came from, what they were about, what jobs they had, what education they had, where was the economic base that they had. So I started looking at those areas, and one of the things that I found was we have a rich history as Black African Americans in Phoenix. And you notice the terminology I'm using. I'm saying Black African Americans because you have to understand, white folk are born in Africa too. And when they come to America, they also are called African Americans. One of the things that I was very fortunate enough was that I had black teachers in an elementary school that actually cared about the education that you obtain as a student. 90% of the teachers lived in the community. So that way, they were always there, they were always watching you, and they knew your parents. They knew who, what, when, and why. So if you acted up, you not only acted up and disgraced your family, but it was also a community. And one of the things I want to say is we don't have communities today. We have neighborhoods. Community was what I defined community was, and I was coming up as a place where everybody knew who your parents were, then everybody could whoop your butt. If you acted up, the neighbor whooped your butt, they told your parents. It wasn't about he say, she say. If the adult said you did it, you did it. So that's the kind of environment that I grew up in, a community where you can leave your front door open. If the neighbors see your front door open, they go and lock your front door and then tell you, hey, I checked your house, everything was there, no problem. And if one neighbor had food, everybody shared in that food. So it was that kind of community. That old saying, it takes a village to raise a child, I grew up in the village concept. And that's what is missing today. Now, let me go back to what I found out about how blacks came about in South Phoenix. 90% of the blacks who are in Phoenix, Arizona, in the Arizona period, came by the way of leaving the South, going to make a better life in that good old California. Everybody wanted to go to California because they heard California was the place to be. Even Jed Clampett left and he came to California, Beverly Hills Village. Okay? So you have to understand, California was the place to be. But one of the things that happened to a lot of the blacks when they left the South was they came out in old cars, old trucks. My parents even came here on a cotton picking truck. They came from the South to pick cotton in Arizona and in California. So what happened was a lot of the cars and the trucks broke down. They didn't make it past Tucson, Casa Grande, or Phoenix. So subsequently, when the cars broke down, they were stuck. So there was a town that was developed by a lot of blacks called Mobile, Arizona, named after Mobile, Alabama, because a lot of the blacks came from that area because it grew a lot of cotton around that area. So they came to Arizona, broke down in Mobile, Arizona, and so they decided to build a town there. It was a black town, Mobile, Arizona. But the bad thing about Mobile, it was built on a floodplain. So every year, 2 years, when the monsoon came with 2 weeks rain, they would flood the town. The town would be flooded. So after the flood, 2 weeks, they would rebuild the town. So eventually they got tired of building the town, so they moved the town 5 miles or 10 miles outside the town to a place called Hopeville. And they was hoping that the town they built there would not be flooded, thus Hopeville. Now, jobs. Jobs was rarity. If you didn't go in town or in Phoenix or Tucson to wash people's clothes, do domestic work, there was very little work for men. Very little work for men, except in the cotton fields. So South Phoenix was a haven of cotton fields. A lot of cotton fields, and it was a lot of orchards, orange trees, grapefruit trees, lemon trees, even had olive trees. So the work was in the cotton field for the men. So what happened was a lot of the men would come from Mobile or Hopeville to pick cotton in South Phoenix, what is known as South Phoenix today. And it provided some relief because the money they made there was not a lot of money. I'm going to tell you, I picked cotton as a kid growing up. And the cotton fields kept me in school because I couldn't see myself doing. I don't take aspirin today because you got to take the cotton out of the top of the bottle. That's how much cotton I picked as a kid. Okay? But the cotton fields was a way that men started, and older women had a living. And one of the things was about the cotton fields where you got paid every week. You didn't get paid, you got paid every week. And the guy had a thing called a notebook. And he kept you down in a notebook where if you picked 100 pounds of cotton, he'd write 100 pounds of cotton and he'll give you so much money per 100. But he also owned the chuck wagon. So when it come time to eat, you didn't have the money, you went there and you ate. He wrote that down and deducted from your weekly salary. So in essence, you were working for free, basically, because nobody knew how much he charged you for a sandwich. Nobody knew how much he charged you for a pop or soda, but he would write in the book. And as long as he wrote in the book, everybody was fine with it. And they called that jotted downs. There were also jotted downs in communities that the white men or the white ethnic group created. Jotted downs were stores that allowed you to come in. You can buy your Post Toasties and your cornflakes and your bread and your lunch meats, and they would jot it down in a book. It was called jotted downs. And when you went to that store at the end of the week to cash your check or pay, you also didn't know how much you had because they would jot it down. And they would say, you owe us $20, you owe us $50. And that's how they survived. Now, there were a lot of people coming to Phoenix to pick cotton because that was one of the things, the crops and the oranges and the lemons and the stuff like that. But because they didn't have a lot of the transportation, a lot of the cars would break down, white folk got upset because they said, wait a minute, we got to have our stuff picked. We got to have our cotton picked. We got to have this picked. Y'all just cannot leave us out here because y'all can't make it to work. So we're going to do this. Why don't we build y'all some little places to stay, and y'all stay here, and y'all pick the stuff, and we'll charge you for the little houses that we built. Black folks said, wow, that's good, because now I ain't got to worry about getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning to get here. I can get up at 5 to get to work. I can walk out my front door and go right to work. Great. Plus, we got a new place to live because the white folk gave us a new place. My grandfather used to tell me the stories all the time. He said, if you truly understand the black experience, one of the things you got to remember is that a lot of black folk grew up being validated by the white folk, because that's that old saying comes in, the white man's ice is colder than the black man's ice, but they both get them from the same ice house. So with that concept, that understanding that a lot of the blacks from the South was brought up in a system where if the white man said it, it had to be true. If the white man did it, it has to be the best thing on earth. You never question that individual during those times. So that's the umbrella, or that's the cloud that a lot of the blacks, when they moved to Phoenix, was under. So whatever the white man said that they needed to get done, it was done. If they said you owe $50, you owe $50. No questions asked. Matter of fact, I know as a kid growing up, there were some people who worked all week picking cotton, and they owed him money instead of them owing you money. So those kind of dynamics took place. So with that said, when blacks started living in those little places that the white folks started building in South Phoenix to pick the cotton, they also had kids. And the kids, by law, had to go to some type of school. So they built a school on 30 or 40th Street and University called Akeem Park, because the cotton that they picked was called Pima cotton. Okay? They had different names for cotton. When you pick cotton, you pull cotton, and you chop cotton. That was the art. Okay? So, Pima Cotton, Akeem Park schools, a 2-room school where young men and young women went from the kindergarten all the way up to the 8th grade. South Phoenix was a haven for that type of industry. Now, blacks became more condensed in South Phoenix because this was the stomping grounds for South Phoenix. They started building little clubs because they needed that after 5 release. So they built it on 24th Street and Broadway, all the way to 32nd Street and Broadway, a bunch of little places. They call them juke joints. Like I think on The Color Purple, they built a juke joint, right? They had a bunch of them. They had all kind of juke joints on both sides of Broadway. The juke joints was ran by white folk, but they put black folk in front to front it off. And all the alcohol that was in there, all the food that was in there, white folk owned it, but black folks presented it to other black folk. Thus, in some of those juke joints, they had live entertainment. One group was very successful that came out of the South Phoenix diaspora called Dyke and the Blazers. Dyke and the Blazers had an international hit called Funky Broadway. Funky Broadway was a hit that came right out of South Phoenix. Dyke them used to sing at a club called the Trotter Inn. And the slogan for Trotter Inn was you trot in and you get cut up and towed out by the ambulance. Police used to come down on Broadway, 24th Street and Broadway, once a month, first of the month, because they know the blacks had gotten money on the first of the month. And they round up black folk, take them to jail, and the black folk had to go out and bail the people out to go to work. So that's how the city increased their budget and their money, because on the first of the month, cops used to round up black folk, they go to jail, they get bailed out. Okay? So you see, that's how they kept that system going. It's still going today. Because every now and then you see black folk get rounded up and they go to jail, they get bailed out. You keep that same mentality, same system going over and over. So with that said, blacks at Akeem Elementary School graduated, and most of them, 90% of them went to a little school that the Phoenix Union High School system put up, and the state of Arizona put up, called Carver. George Washington Carver High School, or colored school. And colored, at that time, everybody didn't want to be called black. They were called colored or Negro. Now, if you understand a little terminology, let me explain that to you. The American Negro and the American Indian were the two common names, right? American Negro, right? The American Negro, the law of the land says you cannot exist unless you have a land-based attachment. You cannot exist as a human being unless you have a land base. So when you come to America from any other country, they always name the country first and then America. So if I come from China, they say he's a Chinese American. If I come from Italy, they say Italian American. If I come from England, they say English America. So the first word means you have a land attachment. That means you exist as a person. There was never a land called Negro. There was never a land called Indian. So that first word of that statement means you have ownership of that. So if I'm from China and I'm a Chinese American, that means I'm a Chinese person that owns America. But America owns the Negro. America owns the Indians. You understand that? You see what I'm saying? So in order for you to exist, if you have no land, can I respect you as a living, breathing person? No, I can't. So in South Phoenix, the Negroes was never looked upon as human beings or totally, fully integrated as a human being. Am I making sense? So you have to understand the dynamics of this thing. So the black folk in Arizona for a long time was never considered human or never considered total person. Can we cut there? Okay.
Close out Perry Elam.
Okay.
Perry Elam segment 1 of video monologue. Close out Perry Elam segment 1 of video 1 monologue.
Okay. How was that? How was that? Did it make